This episode is proudly supported by Crunch. Running a hospitality business isn't for the faint-hearted. Between ordering stock, scheduling rosters, paying bills, motivating your team, and keeping customers happy, there's a lot on your plate. It's no surprise that business planning often gets put on the back burner. Well, here's something that can help. Introducing Crunch, a new app to help simplify the business side of hospo. With Crunch, you get access to practical, bite-sized education, proven strategies, and a supportive community of hospo owners just like you. When it comes to the Crunch, if you're looking for proven ways to build a successful, sustainable business, Crunch has you covered. Try Crunch now. To get 14 days free, just head to crunchhospo.com.au.
I'd like to acknowledge Australia's First Nation people as the traditional custodians of the land, and for this episode in particular, the Merrimanana and Peramang Nation. I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging.
Yes, I think there's one or two Rieslings being made where you think, wow, this is nearly perfect. But what is perfect? And hopefully I haven't even tasted the most perfect Riesling yet. Hopefully there's something else out there which is just truly amazing and even better than what it is today.
This is Over a Glass. I'm Shanteh Wale. Jonathan Hughes is a bit of a freak. A Riesling freak, to be exact. He is an authority on Riesling in Australia and one of the most dedicated artisans that I've ever met. Located in the Barossa Valley, you'll find their brand new cellar door is open for business. Pop on in and try some of the most exquisite white wine on the planet. Hi, John. Thanks for joining me.
Hi, how are you?
I'm so well, and it's really lovely to have you on the podcast. I have long been a fan of your wines. In fact, the first time I heard about you was when I had just moved back from living overseas for 6 years, and yours was some of the first wines I ever tried, and I thought, holy crap, these are amazing.
Oh, wow. So I assume you like Riesling then?
I love Riesling, and it still baffles me today just how incredible the range of Rieslings are in the world. But we're going to go back a bit further, John. Tell me about where you grew up and what was your childhood like?
Right. So, yeah, I grew up in the Clare Valley. Mum and Dad have had a property there since we were about 7 years old. And the first property they bought was a Riesling-only vineyard. So that's really where my interest of Riesling really started from.
Now, what was their background? Did they study, viticulture? Is that what they were always dedicated to do, or did they buy it on a whim?
Yeah, funny enough, Dad was a sales rep and he was servicing the Clare Valley and became good mates with Riley Burtz from Windaree and brother John May from Seven Hill. And those two gentlemen created Dad's interest in wine and really brought Dad to the Clare Valley to start his first vineyard. And then buying the vineyard, before we knew it, the neighbours came over, and that was Dad's introduction into viticulture and maintaining the vineyards.
Wow. I mean, they certainly chose the right place to work with Riesling. What was their approach in terms of the way that they looked after the vineyard? Did they get, experts to come in and look at it, or did they just kind of, learn by kind of doing it?
Yeah, they were very lucky. One of the neighbours, he had at the time massive acreage of vineyards, and he was kind enough to come over and hold Dad's hand for the first year or two and guide him through what needed to be done. So, that was really interesting. But back then, you're talking of 40-odd years ago, so a bit of a conventional farming, and I think Dad over the years has come into today's world a lot more, But yeah, it's very traditional what he does with maintaining the soil, pruning and spraying. So yeah.
Well, it's certainly their vineyard is one of my favourites in Australia. But I want to know, what was your childhood like then? Did you grow up, with an interest straight away when you were, 12 years old, running through the vines and thought this is really cool, or did you have other interests before you pursued wine?
No, I think I was about 7 years old when Mum and Dad bought their first vineyard. So, growing up from the age of 7, surrounded by vines, and I've always been a dad's boy, so to speak. So I always found my dad as a mentor and someone to look up to, someone to aspire to. So whatever my dad did, I really wanted to do as well. So growing up, we ended up buying a bigger vineyard in Northern Clare where we are now, White Hut. And Mum and Dad used to always sell their grapes into Orlando and Wolf Blass. So growing up, I was really inspired to go either into really inspired to go into winemaking, to really show Mum and Dad the grape in the bottle.
Well, I mean, and it is transformative, so they say, and I definitely think perhaps the varietal that shows terroir almost more than any other. Do you remember the first Riesling that you ever tried?
That's a very, very good question. And I would have to go back to, I reckon it was a Quartala Riesling from the early 80s.
Wow, and did you love it?
Yeah, really much so, but I would not have known who the winemaker was back then. But would have been Quartala, would have been at Seven Hill as well with brother John May. So, yeah, so we obviously love Riesling. And Mum and Dad have always had aged Riesling in their cellar. My parents were always giving us a taste of wines coming from the cellar as the bottles were open, regardless of our age. So I think that's where my taste of Riesling came from.
Well, it is a variety that can do so much. And like you said, with a bit of age, it turns into a totally different beast. I think perhaps Riesling and Semillon, when I first started wine, I couldn't quite believe that they could change so much in the bottle and that they were so bulletproof over time. Is that why you have decided only to make Riesling? Have you ever been tempted by any other variety?
Well, before I got into the Rieslingfreak label, I did work for Chris Ringland for a few years, and that's obviously big, bold Barossa Shiraz. So I must admit, I do love playing with reds, and but my passion is Riesling, and obviously Belinda on board now, our passion is Riesling. And I suppose I just love the diversity of the grape and being able to show that diversity in the bottle. Whereas with reds, although you can obviously do a lot with reds, I think it's just harder to show a wide diversity of the one variety.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. You talked a little bit about tasting some wonderful German Rieslings. What are some of your favourite German Rieslings? And tell me a little bit about how the philosophy of making wine in Germany has kind of influenced you till today.
Well, I suppose growing up around Riesling, over time the interest did take me onto Germany. And I suppose I love my top producers over there would definitely be Egon Muller from the Moselle and Gunderlach from the Rheinhessen. But I suppose what I love about the German Rieslings is A, the diversity in terms of sugar levels, and B, the purity of the grape coming through into the bottle.
Yeah, I mean, it took me a very long time to get my head around German Riesling. First of all, the language, all the different vineyards, and I just always found it such a big struggle to study them, but tasting them was the opposite because it was such an incomplete joy. And I thought, man, if I really want to know these, I need to spend the time really working out this amazing place in the world. But I want to know a little bit about, what I love about you is that you have stuck to your guns from the start. And I'm sure if you went to any marketing company and said, I just want to make Riesling and I want to make it in all these different ways, I'm sure a marketing company would say, look, can you make a rosé at least? Can you do something like that? Has it been a challenge to get your dream across?
I reckon the first, I would say 3 or 4 years would have been a bit of a challenge. Like, people are like, John, what are you doing? Where are you going? Riesling's not popular. No one drinks Riesling. And I love to say, I think at the start, all my winemaking friends were just laughing at me. But I think they're all laughing with me now, and they're loud and proud and saying so. But no, like, with our labels, as you probably know, they're all numbered, and we don't show the region or the style on the front label. And that was a real marketing challenge for me in the beginning, because people were like, John, we need to see the region, we need to see the style. And obviously all that's on the back label, very clearly on the back label. But I wanted people to know my wines by number. And I want them to go there and say, I love number 3, I love number 5. And as a side thing, it just happens to be Clare or Eden or Polish or River.
I think in a way it probably helped not simplify, but cut down on some of the noise when it came to Riesling. And I think that that's probably been a good thing, because the same kind of story seems to be told of, oh, I tried Blue Nun and I now never drink Riesling again. And these same stories I keep hearing even to this day, which I find remarkable. But I do think that perhaps rather than saying, was the wine dry, or is it from the Clare or Eden, perhaps just giving people a number and allowing them to trust their own senses and just say, I like this one or I don't like this one. It perhaps gave people a ticket to kind of tasting their wines without preconceived kind of ideas. Do you think?
Yes, yeah, for sure. I think that's quite true. I've never really thought about it that way, but I think you're right there. And quite often with our numbers, we get people through the cellar door constantly, and you say to people, what Riesling have you had? And often they don't remember, funny enough, but they just know they love Rieslingfreak, which for us is obviously the main thing.
Tell me a little bit about making wine with a little bit of residual sugar remaining in the Clare Valley. Australia really has built a reputation on bone dry Riesling, and you've really explored the other realms. Thank goodness for that. Tell me a little bit about the reception of doing that at that time.
Yeah, I think for me, to start with, I love the sweeter style of Rieslings. And I love them for 2 reasons. A, they're very difficult to make, and B, they're very good to drink. So I think I love them just because with the sweeter Rieslings, our aim is really focus on that acid-sugar balance. And when you're winemaking and you stop the ferment to allow this residual sweetness, you only get one shot at doing that. And there's a real art in making that decision. And I enjoy that from a winemaking perspective. And with our sweet wines, we harvest those before our dry wines. So we do the complete opposite to what people think we do when it comes to sweet Riesling. And the reason why we harvest earlier is we're chasing that acid to balance out the sweetness. So both our dry wines, number 5 and number 8, hopefully you see a sweet start, but we're more focused on that dry finish.
I think the word sweetness is an interesting concept, because I think if you gave all of your wines to average Joe punter white wine drinker, they would have probably not quite an understanding of where sweetness levels lie because of how incredibly balanced your wines are. And is that what keeps you interested in making all these different styles of Riesling? It feels like you're a bit of a glutton for punishment, saying that they are kind of so difficult to make.
Yeah, I suppose I don't see me myself as a glutton for punishment, but I just find it really incredible, especially with the dry Rieslings. And you've had both the dry sweet Rieslings, and for me, like the number 5, which is off dry, which is roughly about 13 grams of sugar. For me, that's more perceived fruit sweetness than what is sugar sweetness. And you can give that off dry to so many people and not mention the word off dry, and so many people would just love it just for a balanced Riesling, which is awesome.
Absolutely. I often think too that it's sometimes the first sip that people have when they're expecting one thing and get another. And when I see and I think about my family and friends and the people I drink around most, it's when a wine is slightly got a little bit of sweetness and their first sip and they go, oh, it's sweet. Now, I think that that can change so dramatically when you're eating food and you are a big time cook. How does food play a role in drinking Riesling?
I myself, I just love that food and wine matching. Like I love finding things that balance, flavours that balance each other out. So if we look at our sweeter wines, I love serving pork with those wines because you got the fattiness of the port and the acid from the Riesling. You got the savouriness of the port and the sweetness of the Riesling. And those 4 things together really balance each other out nicely.
Yeah, that's for sure. I think that it is definitely a match made in heaven. And, you know, you can prepare pork so many ways. So the mind...
So many ways. And then you've got the Asian dishes, you've got Thai, you've got Indian dishes, you've got traditional Australian dishes. And I remember one of my distributors, we used to go to a steakhouse each year for the Rieslingfreak releases, which sounds completely silly, but our philosophy was it made them focus on the Riesling. So you weren't trying to match the food with the wines, but by being so opposite, they really had to focus on what was in the glass, if that made sense. So it's taking a completely different approach to food and wine matching, but it was so fun to do because I was so extreme.
Yeah, I've only had a handful of experiences like that, John, and I really noticed how much it changed people's mindset about what they were doing. I wish we saw a bit more of that where the wine came first and the food followed. I don't know if we'll see it in some of the bigger restaurants perhaps, but I really like the idea of that because I agree with you. It really it makes people focus a little bit differently and think about perhaps what they can do as opposed to what they should do. Tell me a little bit about how you and Belinda work together. You're both so dedicated and so passionate. Where does the creative and the kind of roles, how do they work?
Yeah, I think a lot of people ask how you work with each other, and Belinda and I have really gelled together, both in the relationship and at work. Belinda's has always been passionate about Riesling, and it also comes from a corporate background where she's got to experiment with a number of different agents and additives when it comes to winemaking, and especially Riesling. So I think from my point of view, with Belinda coming on board, we both got the experience of winemaking, but she's just been able to polish our Rieslings off just a little bit more before bottling, which has just been exceptional for us. But I think our excitement about Riesling, we both share the same passion, and it always starts in the vineyard. And we just love working with our growers to be able to grow the best Riesling possible from the sites, and just being able to go in there and taste the berries at harvest time. And because obviously the harvest is where it always starts, and you only get one chance to pick a vineyard. But we love the challenge of going in there, challenging each other, see what we think about the bunches, the berries, the vines, the flavours, when we should pick. 9 times out of 10 we would agree with each other. One time, the other time I'm right and she's wrong, so it's all good. So, and then in the winery together, we make all the big decisions together, the pressing decisions, any ads we do, and we just love having opposite thoughts to each other and tasting those in the glass and be able to see the merits of both and work out what way we go before we do an addition. And then as a winemaker, it's just so exciting to see what you end up with. And when the wine goes in the bottle, it's just the result of both of you together combined, sharing your love and being able to share that now with the consumer. It's very romantic, isn't it?
I think it is. And I think that it doesn't always come across that way. There's certainly an unromantic part of it all, in particular, the amount of sheer work that you have to do. But I think at the end of the day, when you have a product that you can pour into a glass, sit back and think, we created this and we didn't mess it up in the part that we had responsibility for, I think that that is truly something remarkable. I'd love for you to explain a little bit about the spin and drain method, because it's something that you've talked about has really highlighted perhaps the focus and the balance of your wines. Can you explain a little bit about that method and how it changes the resulting wine?
Yeah, yep, for sure. So with our winemaker Rieslingfreak, as I said, Shanteh, we use that spin and drain method. Many winemakers, well, start from the beginning. With Riesling as it ages, often it goes through that TDN or Cherasini character, which I myself don't like in Riesling. And when people talk about it, it results to me in some negative talk. That Cherasini character is a result of the stints being exposed to the hot Australian sun. So what we do at Rieslingfreak is, instead of when the grapes go into the press, normally you press the berries to get the juice out. And Belinda and I have taken on the spin and drain process, which is just spinning the press slowly 4 or 5 times over a 40-minute period, which allows the juice just to free drain into the tank. And my theory about that is they're minimising that skin to juice ratio. So we're not pressing the skins up against the juice in the press. So although we haven't had these wines chemically analysed, we've been doing this since 2017, and our Riesling since 2017 for us look fresher, longer than what the ones 16 and before looked like.
Yeah, fascinating. And I think that over the course of Australian history, we've certainly seen an upturn and a downturn of that kind of that kerosene element. I think these days we really don't see it as much and we're much more conscious of it. But it's so interesting to hear about a different style of winemaking that you really think has helped with that and made your life a little bit easier. John, do you ever feel like you've made a perfect Riesling?
I think, as per everything, you're always learning. And yes, I think there's one or two Rieslings being made where you think, wow, this is nearly perfect. But what is perfect? And hopefully I haven't even tasted the most perfect Riesling yet. Hopefully there's something else out there which is just truly amazing and even better than what it is today.
Yeah, it's something to keep you looking forward to, isn't it? The search for the perfect wave or the perfect Riesling, as you said. John.
And it just means I have to drink more, Shanteh, that's all.
Somebody's got to do it, I tell you. And somebody's got to make up for the fact that, like you said, it's not the most popular white wine, which still baffles a lot of us. So somebody's got to make up for that consumption.
Yeah.
John, what do you love most about your job? If you had to give it all up tomorrow, what would you miss most?
I think if I gave it up tomorrow, I would have to start working. That would be the hard bit, that's for sure.
Well, that's very true. And perhaps not having the reward at the end of the day of drinking a gorgeous bottle of wine. I always ask my guests if they could only drink 3 alcoholic beverages for the rest of their life, what would they be and why? It tells me a little bit about you. And I would like to think I know your answer, but I'm actually curious that I might be wrong. So tell me, 3 drinks for the rest of your life, what would they be and why?
I won't say 3 Rieslings because that'd be very boring, that's for sure. But I think I would have to put Cabernet or Spatlay's Riesling at the top, that's for sure, because then that way I've got breakfast covered. I think then I would go for beer. After a hard day's work, a good beer. So that takes me to lunch and thereafter. And then I think I would do a good Malbec. Like I love Clare Malbec, I love Argentinian Malbec. And I think that would just finish off my day nicely.
I love that you've thought about it in terms of a whole happy day. I don't think I've ever had that answer, but it really makes a lot of sense. John, I love your wines. I love what you do. And I think your new cellar door is absolutely stunning. You need to get down there if you haven't visited. Do me a favor and do not ask if they make anything but Riesling. If that happens, I feel like there should be a rule where you need to shout everybody in the place a bottle of wine. So I'm going to make it that rule. Do not ask for a red wine there or you're in for a little bit of pain in your hip pocket. Go visit John and Belinda and Matt at their cellar door. It is really remarkable and I'm sure you'll come away a bit poorer but very happy. John, thank you so much for joining me. It's always a pleasure and I hope we get to chat and have a glass of wine soon together.
That sounds good. Thanks for that.
Thanks for your time. Cheers to you, John. This is Over a Glass. I'm Shanteh Wale. Stay tuned for more stories from the world of wine and drinks. Listen in every Thursday on your podcast app. Follow us on Instagram at overaglasspod and contact us at overaglass@deepintheweeds.com.au.